Good morning, you beautiful people. Round two. Well, it really should have been round one, except that the flag came in the post this morning, so I wanted it. And I got a message from the gods to tell me to launch it today. So hopefully right now you're drawing that. The standard of the free peoples of the West and North. And we're giving it power. And we're taking it back. Because the world is getting so strange and so peculiar that you literally have to hold on to anything to keep you locked in some kind of sanity and ability to survive. Because the whole agenda is geared towards existence and not living. So anything you can hold on to live, whether it's your religion, which is, Christianity's fine, it's good for that, yeah. Your nationality, your culture, your family, your passions, your love of nature, your engagement with nature. No matter what you can do to keep yourself hooked into the world that was, rather than the world, the AI transhumanist world is being foisted upon us. You've got to do it. We've got to do it. And the antidote to that is Julius Savora, is Revolt Against the Modern World. That book that has it all, and that was 100 years ago, more maybe. And he already saw the signs that ultimately the growth of the Marxist idea was the mechanization of man. That humans were ultimately a kind of a biological machine. And this is the roots of Marxism and leftism and communism and socialism. It's the concept that human beings are a machine and the individual doesn't exist. That's the whole point of it. So when you hear trade unions going on about this, that and the other, or other kinds of groups like that, remember it's all about the abolition of the individual and replacing with the hive mind. This is why the left, the socialists and all those types, the lefties and the Marxists and the cultural Marxists, so embraced the whole COVID thing. Because when they saw everyone wearing a mask, it was the nearest to them wearing a Red Army uniform they could get. So this is why they kept saying, they wanted wear a mask. The mask was the universal, uniform of loyalty to the establishment, to the globalist cultural Marxist establishment. That's all that was. And the transubstantiation of the sacred needlecraft was you offering your body up to be Frankenstein into the abyss that they're creating. So the antidote to that is have what you hold. Hold what you have. And you'd be surprised the power in that. As someone said the other day, I have a bit more sympathy because maybe I'm a bit of a softie that way. But he said, I have no sympathy for the people who said they were coerced into taking the needlecraft because their ancestors had to face guns and fellas on horses with swords in order to get a loaf of bread or to vote. And so, losing your job as a fucking, IT help desk was, a small price to pay compared to what they paid to bring us this far. Have what you hold what you have. And I just can't fathom what I see, what's passing for reality, how things like, all the normies are all using ChatGPT. That's their best buddy now. They can't answer a question without it. It's only serve people like us who still perform traditional, levels of learning and scholarship. This will give us a tremendous advantage. It's ironic that they used to always say that the people, and I'm seeing ads for AI that say this. They say the people who missed out on the Silicon Revolution or the IT revolution or the computer revolution and now the AI revolution will find it difficult to survive in the future. Well, guess what? We're surviving just fantastically. In fact, we're surviving better than the ones who've fallen into that matrix. Much better. We're not all on psych meds, near suicidal, wondering if we're men or women, that kind of a thing. This kind of nonsense. We're very well grounded in compared to those people. It's obviously there was obviously a trap from the very start, from the Xerox operating system that Steve Jobs, by all accounts, an appalling human being, they basically pirated from Xerox to now. It's all been to suck us into. It has its good things, of course, but only has its good things because we can make videos like this and communicate, and we can actually share like genuine affection and love and care over the internet. Where people like on TikTok video, they're just so superficial and so horrible, and that's one of the reasons. That's the human they want, the very superficial, surface level that can't really have a debate. And if you challenge them or offer a rebuttal, they'll call you a name and run away. So that's their world. This is what the Marxists want. The Marxists need conformity and universality because they're unable to exist as individuals in the real world. So everything is a solution to them. Trans is a solution. Pride is a solution. Everything like that is everything. The COVID, the masks, the needlecraft. It's all an antidote to them having to be an individual and stand in their own power. And it's just, as this reality dissolves and becomes stranger and stranger, I'm absolutely convinced that some force that isn't human is running the show. I don't know how anyone could think otherwise at this point. If you think everything is hunky-dory and should be the way it is, or, you're probably under this demonic cosmic force. At the opening of the Quatermass, this is a thumbnail of this video, the Quatermass 4 film, tremendous TV film with James Mason and Simon McCorkindale, was that his name? At the beginning of that film, they showed London, the way London... It was supposed to be the 1970s, but it's really today. And they showed the London as what the inner cities are happening now. They're falling apart. And a voiceover says, towards the end of the 20th century, some kind of primal force had risen to cause chaos, and as if the world was rearranging itself. And that's what it feels like now. And it's connected to all this weirdness and spookiness. Like, I know I keep coming back to it, but that strange UFO event that happened over Turkey in 2008, that left a very strange effect on me. And all that was became amplified during the Rona. It just is so, there's the darkness. We almost thought I got a glimpse of the darkness. What our ancestors spoke about when they talked about demons or things in the shadows or the hidden forces. I hear people say things like, oh, in the end, God will win. Well, what is your God? See, this is the whole thing. If you have a dogmatic God, maybe the Gnostics had a point with the Demiurge that you could have a demon pretending to be God. If you're one of the big religions, you have to be very careful. You have to be very, very, very careful. We want humans to win. We want the individual to win. We want the natural law to triumph, which it always will. This is why they're ultimately doomed. I mean, they want to change the human brain with chips, but they don't even know what consciousness is. They assume that consciousness takes place in the neural pathways and the synapses and the partitions in the brain. It doesn't. That's just something we kind of tune into this reality, but the underlying consciousness is somewhere else, in the nervous system or somewhere, or maybe just outside this reality peering in. And yet they still act like you are in your own brain. You're not. Your brain is just a tool. You're not in there. There's the neuroscientist on this earth that can point to where you are inside your brain, because you're not in there. And this goes on and on with so many things. The Hegelian dialect is the controller's own sort of gospel. You know, they fill people full of needlecraft, all the health things manifest, and then they try to make out it's caused by something else. Everything from food poisoning to climate change. It's just astonishing, you know. It's like planet gaslighting. You see, it's just astounding how much gaslighting goes on, non-stop. This is demonic talk, demonic reconfiguration of the human condition. And there's I saw like a video there this morning of the making 20 years ago of a girl who appeared in a TV show with a bag on her head, and she had a beautiful figure, like a kind of Sydney Sweeney figure, and fellas were all screaming. Then he took the back off her head, and she was still like really, really pretty, and the audience were like getting sick, like the fellas in the audience were like, "Ugh, what a dog," and yes, she was far prettier than anything you see today, that are held up as kind of like beauties. Well, you see, they diminished female beauty in order to make the troons more palatable. You know, this is why they went mentally ill over Sydney Sweeney, not because of the genetics part of it. They lost their minds because she's a traditionally naturally beautiful woman, and no troon with all the surgery and hormones in the world could ever get to that level. None of them. So it was like the collapse. The ugliness is their ply and trade. They fill the world for ugly buildings, ugly cars, ugly fashions, ugly people, and then they tell you that these are the norms. They're not. They're nothing. They're a different version of something, but they're not the ideal. The aesthetic of the Greeks and the Romans. You know, this is the aesthetic of the ancient Egyptians, of the ancient Khmer of Cambodia. The aesthetic is definitely an aesthetic of beauty. The ancient Greeks and the Romans. This is why we've had the neoclassical revival and the Renaissance. There was a desire to recreate this beautiful aesthetic, all based in natural harmonies. Those Greek and Roman temples were all built to natural harmonic laws and things like the golden mean and all these other things, and they were created to be sit beautifully in the landscape. You go to places like Sicily, and you could be just going through the middle of nowhere, and then suddenly there's the remains of a small Roman temple on a hill, you know, devoted to Artemis or someone like that, or, you know, and you go, or Dionysius, and it looks so beautifully placed within the landscape. The way it sits there, it's beautifully placed. The shape of it, the columns, just the right size. They understood that to complement nature, you don't create garishness or ugliness, you create beauty. And so there's been a war on a beauty since in the sort of like architectural sense, ever since the French communist brutalists of the then it started really even the Bauhaus thing was quite attractive. It really started after the war in France. But like the last great movements before that, things like Art Nouveau, Art Deco, and even a lot of Bauhaus, although they were modern designs, they still adhered to a form shape that was compatible with a sort of a beautiful aesthetic, or a sort of a fluid aesthetic. They weren't. If you look at the Bauhaus design, it isn't fully hard edged and tight. And you know, you had other things like, you know, Cameron McIntosh and people like that designing furniture. You know, it's amazing. It's just astonishing how it all fell apart. Really, with the psychic catastrophe of World War II, it really fell apart. When you see them like pulling the cladding off skyscrapers in New York and a beautiful Beaux Arts building underneath the 1960s cladding, or you see like, you know, in Dublin, my God, the fucking architectural vandalism was unbelievable, and most of it was done by the local government. And Dublin used to be full of what they called Dutch billies. They were Dutch-style houses. There's still quite a few left, but the whole city was covered in them. They were complementary to the large numbers of Georgian architecture, and they came into fashion after the Dutch Republic basically conquered Ireland when they defeated Seamus Akaka, James the Shit, at the Battle of the Boyne in 1690. So you had like basically Dublin became a Dutch city, and Dutch styles of architecture started to come in when they're under the Glorious Revolution thing. And there was loads of these buildings. There's still quite a few, but like they knocked so many of them down to build like office blocks and things like that. It's just astonishing, the vandalism. The worst of all being Wood Quay, which was a beautiful Georgian scape, and then they knocked it down to build an office block. But then you got a beautiful vista of Christchurch Cathedral from the river, and then they discovered the original Viking city was underneath there, and the local government built fucking concrete boxes on top of it, just to say fuck you to the past and fuck you to the aesthetic. And those monstrosity buildings are still there today. And like that's one of the things. If I was a dictator of Ireland, you know, like the great architectural vandalism, I would say that all comes down, or else you rebuild a beautiful lost building that was lost. If it doesn't have to be in that location, but I want an old building back there. You can build a modern interior office behind it, or apartment buildings, but the facades must be compatible with the old city, which is kind of happening in places like Holland and other countries in Germany. And it needs to happen badly in Ireland. Badly it needs to happen. But this is again the war on beauty. They'll say, oh, there's a functionality to the box, but you can still have a beautiful facade with a functional interior office or apartment spaces behind it. It's like an electric guitar. You can have an acoustic guitar that looks like an acoustic guitar, but it has a pickup and a preamp inside it, and so ostensibly an electric guitar. So it has modern and traditional. Traditional facade, modern interior, and electronics. You can do the same in a building. There's nothing, and there's, oh, well, art and changes go on, but there's a certain, we all know that it's not going anywhere nice. I mean, look at Newgrange, Jesus Christ. They built a 1960s American-style shopping mall or drive-in facade in the front, using hundreds, maybe thousands of tons of reinforced iron bar concrete, because, and quite possibly that sunbox where the sun comes through on solstice, through the hole, that's probably a modern fake created by this. Now, the solstice goes down the tunnel, but I'm talking about the actual, the sunbox thing, created by this architect / theatre set designer who destroyed. If you see photographs of Newgrange or videos, I'm going to be on Room 313 channel. I have some videos of Newgrange in the 60s before they built that monstrosity, and it's just standing stones, the hill with some lovely old chestnut trees and sycamore trees on it, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And no, it's like the whole thing. They put a fence around, and they charge money for people to come into it, and then they kill the aesthetic. Like, I always remember the first time I saw Stonehenge. There used to be a side road that came past off the A303, and it was a farmer's access road. And it was in the evening, and Stonehenge had been closed, and the sun had nearly completely gone down. And we went up this laneway and looked across the field, and there, with no tourists around it, as the sun was already set, but behind Salisbury Plain, there was Stonehenge. And I was like, holy shit, it is exactly like what you think it's, you know, it's like one of these things when you see it, yeah, it's real, that's it, it's real. No, it's the real, that's it, it's real. I can understand it, I totally get it now, it's not a letdown in any way. And I'm so happy I saw Stonehenge that time, the first time, from across the farmer's field, with the sun just had gone down, and the stones just there in the twilight, with no people around it. And that was like, yeah, that's the way I was meant to see it. Even they understood the aesthetic of something in the landscape. So that's it, you know, this is why I make such a big deal of natural law. Natural law isn't only just the concept that we have this sort of like, this payload inherent within reality that has to be kept in equilibrium. It applies to so many things: architecture, art, aesthetic, beauty, everything. You know, I'm looking across that field there, and there's There's a rolling meadow with, and it's all, there's some fields that were laid out by the Normans back 1,000 years ago or 900 years ago, whatever. They're all like randomly shaped. They're not perfect squares. And they're all around the circumference are hawthorn trees and blackthorn. And it just looks, it's beautiful. Even though it's a man-made landscape designed for farming and agriculture, it's beautiful. It sits perfectly within the landscape. And that's natural law. The farmers cleared off the land. They put boundaries up either using dry stone walls or hedgerows and to keep the animals in. And they worked with the landscape as its undulations and its flow and the lay of the land. And everything that we're foisted with today, it's like an alien force that doesn't understand life on this planet. Like an alien force that sees, and this is like when, did you hear Bill Gates has released butter made from carbon? Now, Irish butter, Irish dairy everything is by far the greatest on this earth because of those green fields and those grazing animals. Irish chocolate, Irish ice cream, Irish butter, Irish cream, anything involves dairy that comes from Ireland is astonishingly good. But the butter is spectacularly delicious. And it's because of those cows in those fields over there, grazing those hills laid out by the Normans in different various shapes, feeding on the grass under the Irish sun, in the Irish rain, with nutrients from the Irish soil. And Bill Gates is telling you, you can't have that. Here is some butter made from carbon. Hold what we have what we hold.